All right. Oh, go ahead, Chuck. What else?
I think I've got everybody in right now. That's in. I am already recording.
Good. Okay, cool.
1 mile, keep left.
Oh, there's Dennis. Dirk, you're muted. You want me to unmute you?
No, I'm just keeping it muted so you don't get background noise.
Okay. And Dennis, I don't recognize Dennis's name. Dennis, note taker.
I think that was Dennis Surgeon.
Okay.
Use the left 3 lanes to keep left.
You can mute Deb.
Yeah, mute me. I can't mute myself right now. And
Okay.
normal bumper to bumper traffic.
Okay. There you go. Doug, you're muted. Do you want to be unmuted? It's very quiet. Is anybody there?
Yeah, we're all here.
I got a lot of people muted for some reason.
That's something everybody can control themselves too.
Yeah, I know. But if they don't, if they think there's something wrong, that's a problem.
The thing that would be wrong is that I'm actually talking. That's why I keep it muted.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. We have 13 participants. What do you know?
So, Chuck,
And
you've got
all of us, are red beads.
All right, Chuck, you've got opening remarks.
I've got opening remarks. Yeah, this is probably something most of you are somewhat familiar with. This is the presentation that Bill and I were going to do at the forum and ran into overwhelming technical difficulties. If you want any parts of this, Bill is going to put the recording of this up on our YouTube page, along with links to a couple of the embedded videos that are included in this. This is the first in a new series of InThinking hour-long presentations. This one is unique in that it will be today and tomorrow. Most of them are just the third Tuesday of the month. But this one, rather than take up 2 months with it, we're going to do it today and tomorrow. And was there any important parts that I missed there, Bill?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, this is a brand new offering, and part of what we have in mind for me presenting this month is to repeat the presentation that I had planned for Chuck and I to do at the In2 forum in July, where we had some technical issues. And so, and we were not the only one. Mike Beck, who's with us, will be presenting next month. And so for those presentations that ran into challenges at the forum in June, we're going to ask those presenters to continue in this series. And then eventually we'll get to the point that the people presenting in this series will be, for example, people that are presenting at next year's forum, which is confirmed as July 17th, 18th, and 19th. But the big thing is this is an ongoing thing. We're excited to get this going. 1 hour sessions. They'll be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. And so with that, we'll see how far we get today. The plan is to go for an hour today and then save the rest for tomorrow. And so there's oops, hold on. Well, I want the slides advanced. Okay, here we go. What just happened?
You went to the end of your slide presentation. So whatever you're starting, it's at the end.
Somehow you went to
Yeah, no, I know how that happened. I know
slide
exactly.
150 or whatever it was.
All right. Because, Doug, it was the end. I forgot. All right. So the Red Beads Experiment Plus. So we're going to look at how Dr. Deming would present the Red Bead Experiment. And then I'll show you what the plus is. It's taking it one step further. All right. So beginning in 1980 until his passing in 93, Dr. Deming presented a transformative seminar known as 4 Days with Dr. Deming. A cornerstone was a simulation of factory life, his famous Red Bead Experiment, with seminar attendees serving as the willing workers and Dr. Deming as the foreman, with implications extending far beyond manufacturing and environments of factories. Deming used this experiment to remind us that the performance of any organization is a function of how well the system is managed. And he would say the system does not manage itself. And so this presentation expands the implications of the Red Bead Experiment by exploring content that I learned about from Dr. Junichi Taguchi a few years before I met Dr. Deming that I don't think is all that well known. So we're going to look at what Dr. Deming did, and then what I learned from Dr. Taguchi is the plus piece of this. And so it's divided into these 5 parts. Wait, please tell us the Red Bead Experiment, Beyond the Red Beads, and wait, please tell us. Opening remarks. And so this is Junichi Taguchi, who I met 1987.
Bill, you're not
and
Bill,
he is wearing.
Bill, you're not
Yeah.
sharing. You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Chuck. So when they had that snafu, where more? Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Who's that young guy with Dr. Taguchi?
Yeah,
Who's that young guy with a beard?
right.
But you notice Dr. Taguchi is wearing an InThinking Network baseball cap, and I'm presenting him with an InThinking Network polo shirt. This was his 80th birthday. That's what all the balloons are about. So this was 2004. Okay. And this is 1990 with a younger version of this, of me meeting Dr. Deming for the first time. This is a photo op. I just thought I should have a photo taken with this guy. And there's Dr. Deming. Why are we here? And this is a slide, a photo of a slide that I actually used that is next to the last 4-day seminar. Guy I got to know has had the slide. Dr. Deming gave it to him. And so Dr. Deming would say at the beginning of his 4-day seminars, why are we here? I don't know. And he would say, to have fun, to learn, and to make a difference. And so sticking to that for our time together today. Dr. Deming had 14 points, 14 obligations for management, he would call them. They came out in the early 90s. Create constancy of purpose, adopt the new philosophy, whatever that is. Cease dependence on inspection, which in some organizations translated to get rid of the inspectors. And he said, no, that's not what he said. End the practice of awarding business on price tag alone. And I shared that with some in a class last week. And I said, can you imagine in your personal lives looking for the lowest cost surgeon? I said, no, we don't buy on price tag alone at home, only at work. So where's Dr. Deming coming from? Improve constantly forever the system of production and service, institute training. Dr. Deming would say, training tells you how, education tells you why. Institute leadership, drive out fear, break down barriers between departments. And the website for the Deming Institute that was one of the most frequently visited websites, from when I worked there, I knew we had these stats, was I think the Red Bead Experiment and the 14 points. I think the 14 points was the most heavily visited website. Number 10, eliminate slogans, exhortations, and targets. 11, eliminate work standards, eliminate management by objective. 12, remove barriers that rob the hourly worker of his or her right to pride of workmanship. Remove barriers that rob people in management and in engineering of their right to pride of workmanship. Institute a vigorous program of education. That's the learning why piece. And then put everyone together to accomplish the transformation. And one thing that comes to mind is when Mike Beck presents next month, Mike will be sharing a perspective of what it was like to work within General Motors and be on a team that was trying to help General Motors bring these ideas into application. And that's something I know nothing about because I was not on the inside of an organization as Mike was. So you're going to be hearing about those types of perspectives next month from Mike Beck. But the piece I wanted to focus on in our time today was this improve constantly forever, the system of production. And the reason I want to focus on that is what I found in my time at Rocketdyne in the continuous improvement team, people did not call me, rarely did people call me up and say, things are going well with this department or this process or product, and we want to make it better. Most often they called me up and said, this doesn't work. It worked last week, and we need your help in going from it doesn't work to it works, which is not continuously improving the production of system of service. And so that became something I started to wonder about is, why was most of the time I was at Rocketdyne fixing what was broken, rarely coming close to this constantly forever improving the system of production? And so I want to give some highlights as to why I think that was the case, because I don't think I'm the only one that experienced that. And there's Russell Lakoff. And so Dr. Taguchi I met and spent a great deal of time with. Dr. Deming I met twice, almost in passing. I never asked him a question. Russ Akoff visited Rocketdyne for 5 years in a row. I would visit him in Philadelphia. So I spent a great deal of time one-on-one with Russ Akoff and one-on-one with Dr. Taguchi. Mike spent probably a lot of one-on-one time with Dr. Deming. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. There's a 3-hour conversation between Dr. Deming and Russ Akoff, which happened in 1992. There's a transcript. If you search for Deming Akoff transcript, you can find a 50-page double-spaced transcript of this conversation, which was condensed down to a 30-minute video, volume 21 of the Deming Library. And in there, Russ, who was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and is the person through whom I met Louis Padullo, who's here. Russ would say the characteristic way of management we have taught in the Western world is to take a complex system, divide it into parts, and then I added elements, tasks, etc., and then try to manage each part as well as possible. And if that's done, and here I would ask people, how would you complete this sentence from Russ? And then I would say, how would you complete it? And roughly 3/4 of the people would say it would perform well. You know, things would be okay. And maybe 1/3 to 1/4 would say, not good, not good, not good. But roughly 2 out of 3 to 3 out of 4 think that's okay. But there's a much smaller group that would say, yeah, and if that's done, the system will behave well, which is what Russ said. But then Russ completed that thought with, and that's absolutely false. So, but what I find fascinating is not only is what Russ talking about alive and well, but I think if you ask people what would you do instead, they wouldn't know what to do instead. They just one is this is what we do. 2 is there's nothing wrong with it. 3 is, well, how else would you manage something? Well, we'll look at that. Another thought from Russ in the same conversation with Dr. Deming is a system is not the sum of its parts, it's the product of the interactions. The art of managing interactions is very different than the management of actions, and history requires this transition for effective management. Well, when I tell audiences, whether it's graduate students or companies I consult with, is what is an interaction? I say an interaction is an action which is completed based on another action. The actions are connected. And the simple example I use is an interaction would be, I can't order the wine without knowing the meal. I can't arrange the music for the wedding without knowing the guest list. I can't order the food without knowing the guest list. The idea that I can't do my job without knowing how you're doing your job is an interaction. And the ability to do that, complete the task without, is what managing actions is about. And I like to give people examples and say in our personal lives, we do both. We manage actions, we manage interactions. We do both at home. We don't know it means what it means. We don't call it an interaction. But I think it's really exciting to be able to convey to people that at home they're quite competent in managing interactions. But then when they move into a work setting, they become very competent in managing actions and don't think in terms of interactions. I mean, one is that they're not thinking about either word. But what I point out to the managers that I work with as I'm beginning to train their people is, what's coming out of this is there's a lot of things we do at home that we could do at work. And if somebody says, I don't know what that means, they're lying. I mean, they may not know the vocabulary, but understanding how things are connected is a skill set at home that we kind of leave at the door when we enter an organization. So learning how to manage interactions is not a new skill, it's a new word. And then the question is, do organizations have systems in place to do that? That becomes a question. So I look at a lot of what I'm trying to do with people is providing a vocabulary for things they're not aware of. Frederick Taylor, the management is the art of knowing what you want and seeing that they do it in the best possible and cheapest manner. And from what I've read, Taylor in his time was what Taylor is considered to be like the first management consultant, and more well known in his time frame than any other management consultant in history. He was that well known, and his ideas are alive and well. So who's the they? Peter Drucker Management is a multi-purpose organization that manages a business and manages managers and manages workers and work. Okay. And then Henry Fayol from France Management is to forecast, to plan, to organize, to command, to coordinate, and control activities of others. Mary Parker Follett, who I learned of through looking at Peter Drucker's work, she was at the Harvard Business School. Management is the art of getting things done through people, which is, I think, a lot more affectionate way of looking at people. And then my explanation, I look at management as an activity of allocating an organization's resources, be it ideas, finances, equipment, time, space, raw materials, tools, and techniques, as guided by a set of concepts and strategies. And so there are inputs which get integrated into an output. The inputs are resources. The outputs are products and services. So I look at, organizations are a resource conversion system. There are tools and techniques. These are, in the world of quality management, there's lots of tools. Tools are the implements, like a garden shovel, used to complete a task. Techniques are the methods. So I look at tools and techniques are the ability to do things faster and cheaper. And what I like to point out in this slide is tools and techniques are one thing. Concepts and strategies get into the why. Why are we doing this? And I look at these as a sampling of concepts and strategies. And I think Dr. Deming's work is radically different than everything on there. Robust design is the work of Dr. Taguchi, which is, it has to do with the variation aspects of Dr. Deming's system of profound knowledge. It has to do with the systems aspect. You could argue there's a theory aspect, but Dr. Taguchi's work did not involve a people psychology aspect. But what I've found in studying all of these is uniquely the Deming philosophy is looking at what Akoff would call looking at shifting the thinking from actions to interactions, looking at things uniquely as a system. And so concepts in general are abstract ideas, fundamental building blocks of thoughts and beliefs. Strategies are a plan of action or policy to achieve a major overall aim. So within Rocketdyne, we had a deployment strategy. Within Blue Origin, where I consult, we have a very deliberate strategy on how to bring these ideas to the organization. Tools and techniques, again, to borrow from Akoff, are about efficiency. That's the faster and the cheaper. And I look at concepts and strategies as what Russ would call effectiveness, which is getting into the why are we doing this? Tools and techniques are about doing things well. And what Russ would say is, but are we doing things well that are worth doing at all? And many of you have heard Russ say that the better you do the wrong thing, the wronger you become. And then I look at all of this as in terms of a feedback loop. But I use this slide to differentiate the tools and techniques that Deming would talk about control charts from concepts and strategies. People say, well, we're using the same tools and techniques that Dr. Deming did. Yes, but your strategies are different. Differentiation is not the tools and techniques, it's the strategy, the concept, and then how are we going to deploy that strategy, that concept. We're all similar. Japanese companies were all very similar. And this book was a 5-year study of 70 plus automobile assembly plants in 17 countries. The conclusion was the similarities in these 3 countries. And the US was said to be, that's that mass production stuff. European, that's the craftsmanship. And then the Japanese, that's a little bit different. And out of that came the term lean to differentiate it from mass production and craftsmanship. And then there are the principles of lean, defining a value stream, mapping the value stream, creating flow, establishing pull, and then the pursuit of perfection. And value, they say, is what the customer is willing to pay for. Then we identify and map the value stream. We create flow after removing waste, ensure that the flow of the remaining steps is smooth without interruptions. Establishing pull. The goal of a pull-based system is to minimize inventory and work in process items while ensuring that we've got what we need. And then last, every employee should strive towards perfection while delivering products based on the customer needs. And in my research, this explanation of Toyota is Frederick Taylor in the 21st century. This is the thinking of Frederick Taylor, the father of the Toyota production system. Taiichi Ono is considered the father, was supporting Toyota going back to 1932. He's an industrial engineer from training. Industrial engineering is the engineering of Frederick Taylor's work. So if you go to universities today and study industrial engineering, you're learning about the Toyota production system. You're learning about Frederick Taylor, not Dr. Deming. And so this is in here to provide a contrast between what Deming's talking about and what most people are out there doing. What to call it. This is interesting. So telephone started way back when, and we, right, going back to the 1900s, and what do we call it? An iPhone in 2000. And so what's behind this slide is this quote from Charles Handy, who died within the last year. I corresponded with him once. I was on an email that Russ sent to Charles Handy and some others, and that's how I got introduced to Charles Handy. So I corresponded with him once. I find his work brilliant. He says, the use of old words to describe new things can hide the emerging future from our eyes. And so if you look at an iPhone, and call it a phone, well, how much of calling it a phone gets us stuck in the old use and not the new use? And so amongst the things I've learned from Handy is, how language becomes an obstacle. And I'll give you a sense of what more I'm talking about here. And so this is this is in his from the New York Times, in his obituary. Charles Handy, a writer, social philosopher, and management theorist, who presciently imagined a new corporate world where employees worked remotely, jobs were outsourced, had portfolio careers. He was 92. What I'll do, Chuck, make a note, and I'll include a link where people can find Handy's obituary. And also, this book came out. Yeah, it was when the book came out, I then went back and did some more research on him. So he was writing, he completed this book just before he passed, A View from 90. So what is perfection? Let's go back to vocabulary. Having all the required or desirable elements, quality or characteristics, as good as it is possible to be, as good. I don't know what all means. Absolute, complete. And so in a preceding slide, I talked about the Toyota production system and the pursuit of perfection. And what I tell students and clients is the pursuit of completeness is not the pursuit Deming was talking about of continual improvement. And I would go on to say, if you believe in perfection, then you can't believe in continual improvement. It's one or the other. One or the other. Making something completely free from faults. Russ would say, getting rid of what you don't want, the faults, he says, doesn't get you what you want. So this is amongst the issues I have with lean management, which is getting rid of what we don't want and not talking about what we want, let alone a belief in perfection, let alone a system which is all about managing actions. The preamble of the Constitution, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States. And so why do I include that? I include this because our founding fathers, 250 years ago, did not talk about a perfect union. They talked about a more perfect union. Not perfect, more perfect. And this comes from John Garamendi, who is a California legislator, congressman, and he was asked to explain this. And I think it's brilliant. A more perfect union implies that the progress of the American experience is never complete. That's what Dr. Deming would say, continual improvement. The adjectives more coupled with perfect lead me to conclude that my task as a congressman is to seek to improve the state of our union while knowing that my efforts and our collective efforts will still be imperfect. It'll be left for those who follow to continue. And so when people in the lean community say, Bill, when we say perfect, it's way out there. You'll never get there. And I'd say, I don't believe there exists. And they say, well, when we mean perfect, we don't mean ending. And I said, no, the founding fathers knew that perfect means end. so over, done. Continuous, marked by uninterrupted extension in space, time, sequence. Better has no finish line, says Arrowhead Water. That I buy into. Right? Better is in our nature. To me, that's 0.5 of Dr. Deming's 14 points. Benchmarking in the late 1960s, Frank Pipp, who I unfortunately never got a chance to meet, and I could have. It's unfortunate. He was an assembly plant manager at Ford back in the 60s. He routinely had his Ford team buy competitors' cars to take them apart. Why? Because at the Ford plant he managed back in the 60s, he knew firsthand that when the assembly team put together the mating parts of the car, rubber mallets were always used to bang together the mating parts. Yet every now and then, two parts of an automobile went together without a mallet, and that the Ford plant called snap fit, as in, snap your finger. Wow. So it'd be like me at the end of the day meeting Chuck Boone for lunch and say, hey, Chuck, this morning I had two parts that were snap fit. And Chuck would say, I had one last week. So at the Ford plant, snap fit was a now and then. Frank Pip had his assembly team buy competitors' cars and take them apart to see how they assembled, and found they all assembled just like theirs. Hammers most of the time. And let me back up. So he did all that routinely, and they at one point bought a car from a new competitor, took it apart, put it back together, never needed a mallet. In the account, he said he thought they were hallucinating, so he said, take it apart again, put it back together. They put it together twice without using hammers. He called out someone from Ford corporate headquarters to come see this. The Ford executive, I don't know how many, came out, met with the team, saw the account firsthand. When prompted, the highest ranking Ford executive said to the team in front of Frank Pip, the customer will never notice. Frank Pip took that as a reason to leave, and he left shortly thereafter, went to work at Xerox, and became a very senior Xerox executive. And in that circle, he would have known Barry Bebb, who I met through Dr. Taguchi, who was another senior Xerox executive. And so that was in the late 60s. They discovered that Toyota, that competitor, was selling cars that were 100% snap fit. And so that's this anecdote that Frank Pip told the CEO of Xerox, David Kearns. He said at that time, Ford, along with the others, didn't believe you can assemble a car without a rubber mallet ready to bang the parts together that didn't quite fit. The rest of the parts were known as snap fit. Well, when I went to the memorial service when Dr. Taguchi died in 2012, one of the speakers, one of the other presenters who worked for Chrysler at the time, said that at that time, 2012, he said at the end of the assembly line, they had a 4-foot long 2x4 covered with carpeting that was being used at that time to get the parts together. And that 4-foot 2x4 covered with carpeting was called the Enforcer. So is that still being used today? I don't know. When Pip's crew got done taking apart the car, they were speechless. It was a Toyota truck. They hadn't seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. The customer will never notice, so they thought. All right. Here's some. Wait. So please tell us. This is a takeoff from National Public Radio's. I don't know if it's still going on, a Saturday afternoon show. Wait, please tell me. And so I made a version for the Deming Institute when I worked there as a comedy line. And so Dr. Deming said, in God we trust, all others bring data. True or false? And the answer is false, but he's quoted for that, but he never said that. What he actually said was, if you cannot, actually, Dr. Deming said, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. That is also false. What he actually said, he quoted Dr. Lloyd Nelson. He said, the most important figures that one needs to manage are unknown and unknowable, but successful management must nevertheless take account of them. And we shall learn as we go on that the results of most activities of management cannot be measured, says Dr. Deming. For example, the benefit of training cannot be measured. The cost we know, it shows up in the ledger, but the benefits, no, the benefits show up in the future. Then why do we spend money on training? From Dr. Deming, we believe that the benefits in the future will outweigh the cost. In other words, we manage by theory, by prediction, not by visible figures. Dr. Deming's ideas only apply to manufacturing. That was a question I would get when I worked for the Deming Institute. And I would say, why do you ask the question? Well, so many of his examples are about manufacturing, and I work in a nonprofit, so it seems like his ideas only apply to manufacturing. No, not quite. So that's false. This is on the left is a Paulo Lopez, who sat next to me when I worked at Rocketdyne right out of college. His office is around the corner. Then that's Gordon Brown, who's a regular member of the planning team for the In2 InThinking Network. And so I don't know where the photo was taken, but what's behind the headline is one afternoon I went by my office on a Saturday, and I walk into my office to get something, and Paulo happened to be there working, and he sees me and he says, "You got your hair cut?" And I said, "Yeah, I came to the valley to get my hair cut." And then he says, "Where do you go to get your hair cut?" I said, "I go to a place on Sherman Way, a couple blocks away." And then the question was, "How long have you been going there?" And I said, 7 years. And then he started to laugh uncontrollably. And I said, why is that so funny? He said, "Bill, you work in the continual improvement office, but you go to the same place for 7 years to get your hair styled." And I said, "Paulo, I've been married to the same person at that time for 14 years. And so I find this confusion that continual improvement means change everything all the time. No. And so there's my wife of now 42 years and our first family, the kitties. All right, the red bead experiment. And so this is a link I will send out. It's on the Deming Institute's YouTube channel for those who need a refresher. Chuck and I, back in the spring, did the red bead experiment for what, Chuck? We had 4 people as willing workers, right?
Yes.
And it's about an hour of activity, having people come up and put the paddle in and do all that. So if you want to be refreshed as to what that means, you can, well, again, we'll follow the link. And this is a video posted not that long ago by Bill Schirkenbach, and it maybe it'll be a video that he recorded from a General Motors session, which has some great comedy from Dr. Deming in the audience. So both those clips are included here. We won't watch them. I'll send you the link to watch them. No, okay. What matters is when Dr. Deming ran the red bead experiment, there was a 2 plastic bowls, a larger one and a smaller one. In the larger bowl, you may faintly be able to see that there's something in there. You see the paddle, which is inserted into the bowl. In that bowl are roughly 5,000 beads, maybe 1/8 of an inch in diameter, 4,000 white, 1,000 red. Dr. Deming would have willing workers from the audience come up, pour the beads from one container into the other, and then back into the first one as a mixing process. And then the manufacturing process was to take that raw material, put this paddle in, and that paddle has divots, 50 divots, 5 in one direction, 10 across. And one by one, he would have the workers put the paddle in at exactly some degree and move it around a little bit and then withdraw it. And the withdrawal is the process of putting the paddle in and taking the paddle out is you can think of as creating the beads for the customers. What the customers want are white beads, not red beads, but red beads are just part of the raw material. So one by one, the willing workers come up, put the paddle in, and follow a process of step 1 mixing, step 2 producing, which is putting the paddle in, withdrawing it, step 3 going over to 2 inspectors. The inspectors would count the number of red beads in the paddle. That would be recorded. And so one by one, this process would go on. And then what Chuck and I have done in the past, we didn't do at the forum, is have people watch the video, and then we say, hey, you've watched the video, let's do it live. Let's do it with volunteers from the audience. And for a number of reasons, we didn't do it, but that's what this demonstration time is about. So we needed 4 willing workers. We needed 2 inspectors. We needed 1 inspector general. And then Chuck was going to record the results. And then my job was to be the foreman, pretending I'm Dr. Deming. And these results come from chapter 7 of the New Economics, where Dr. Deming did it with 6 workers, and get results like this after 1 day of production. And then I would ask the audience, what do you see going on here? How is classic management going to look at these results? And you get, well, classic management's going to blame Tim for 14, is going to praise David for only having 4. And then day 2, now what? Well, now classic management's going to look at Tim and say, Tim, you got the message. You went from 14 red beads to 8. Tim, you missed the mark. You went from being our best to being one of our worst. And then day 3, David, you're still awful. Tim, you're missing it. But Larry's catching up. And then day 4, more of the same. And then we add them all up. And then what? And then point out that classic management looks at these results in isolation, gives an award to Larry for having the best results. What Dr. Deming would do is fire Tim and Sari, and then continue without them. And this is Taylor management looking at things in isolation, blaming the red beads on the workers, not the system that includes the workers. And then we would watch a video, and I'll again send you the link to this if you haven't seen it. And you get to hear Dr. Deming talking about the lessons learned. And then better management, tools and techniques coming from Dr. Deming are, what if we take these results and plot day by day the results of worker 1 through worker 6, and then day 2? And what if instead of looking at them in isolation, we plotted them on a run chart? Again, that's a tool looking at time ordered data. And then the next step Dr. Deming would show his audiences is, what if we calculated the average? And what if we calculated control limits in upper and or lower, ideas that he learned about from Walter Schuhart back in the 30s. And what Dr. Deming learned from Walter Schuhart is, 1 is going to always be variation. 2 is there's a chance that the variation is randomly above and below the average within the limits, in which case he would say the system is stable, it's predictable. What we expect in the future should represent this. We should expect variation. And then what I did in the presentation is talk about this being the predictable common cause variation is present always. Another thing I like to point out is, for those who are new to variation, I'd say when you understand variation, as I learned from Dr. Deming and Dr. Taguchi, then you learn that no 2 snowflakes are the same. Cloning does not produce identical offspring. So instead of thinking same means identical, in the world of variation, same means with variation, same is that all these are as identical as they'll ever be until you improve the system. But same no longer means identical because we have to allow for variation. So if we look to the past and understand control charts, then if the system is stable, the results in the future should be the same. And so what I'm looking at here, again, when I show students is, if you have the same bowl, the same willing workers, the same paddle, the same beads each time, the reason that's a solid line is to say the system is closed. All those things inside are the same. And if all of them are the same, we'd be hard pressed to get a different result. But if the system is open, open could mean that we're changing the bowl each time. We're changing the paddle every day. We're changing the workers every day. Oh, the workers change, it may not make a big difference. But imagine we've got a company where we've got a new supplier of beads every day. Then there's a likelihood of getting a point which is outside of this system. And so my explanation is the role of a control chart is to help us detect contributions that are outside the usual system, and that the system is not closed, it is actually open, and that with the use of control charts, we can detect changes upstream that are that are coming from outside our current system, and that becomes a trigger that there's something going on we got to go take a look at. So what do the red beads represent? And again, I'm looking at the clock, and we've got about 5 more minutes and we'll close. And so what do the red beads represent? People typically say defects, things you don't want. How do we eliminate the red beads? One is don't buy them. Work with suppliers that don't deliver red beads. And so we're going to sort them out. What do the white beads represent? And so when I've explained this to our daughter, Allison, who Lewis knows, and she's a senior high school English teacher and varsity swim coach. And so I says, Allison, what are the white beads in your classroom? She said, I don't know. What's my white bead? I said, a projector that works, a stapler that works, a computer that works, a door that closes. Whereas a screen that doesn't pull down could be a red bead, or a projector that doesn't work is a red bead. So I look at the white beads are the things that are going well, and the red beads are the things that are not going well. All right. And so we've got time to get into the beyond the red beads. And then again, we'll continue tomorrow. And so why do you need to make zero defect manufacturing part of your corporate culture? So I use this in my university classes because a zero defect manufacturing culture is one striving for no red beads. We want all white beads. And that quality system is alive and well. Boeing's advanced quality system, which is, and the reason I know it because Rocketdyne was owned by Boeing for 9 years, so we got introduced to the Boeing's advanced quality system, otherwise known as AQS. Boeing's advanced quality system was striving for zero defects. And so a $2 part can bring a 40,000 piece of machinery grinding to a halt. There's an old adage in the manufacturing industry, said briefing moderator Jim Love, you can have fast, cheap, right, choose two. But today's manufacturers live in a world where they need all three. They need zero defects. And so I have this in here because this focus on striving for zero red beads, all white beads, is the prevailing quality management system around the world today. I have rarely seen anything different from that. That's Phil Crosby, zero defects in the early 60s. He says is another way of striving for do it right the first time. Quality is defined as conformance to requirements. And what Crosby was famous for in 1963, at that time he was a quality inspector in aerospace, worked for a company that made product for the military, and they were allowed to ship defects. And so a given order might allow for 3 defects per 100 or whatever it was. And he said the standard ought to be zero red beads. And so instead of allowing them, we ought to put our foot down and say 0 defects is the standard alive and well today. But I don't believe you can explain 100% snap fit Toyota pickup truck with this model of quality. Because to me, when I look at a Toyota and how the reliability we've experienced and how well the parts work together, I was sharing with a friend this morning, of all the Toyota products my wife and I have owned since 1989, we've never replaced an alternator, a starter. No mechanical component has failed other than once. Our 1998 Toyota Sienna minivan, which is a brand new minivan, the transmission failed at 10,000 miles. And that's the only headache we've ever had with a Toyota. I worked at my father's gas station back in the 70s, and I got used to car repairs. And so what I'm saying is a quality system defined as conformance to requirements. I don't know how that explains the exceptional reliability and snap fit performance of Toyota. I think there's something else going on, which is a lot of what we're going to look at tomorrow. And so here in closing, I would say, what I say to audiences, imagine what would happen in your organization if beginning at the opening of operations tomorrow, everything produced 100% white beads remained that way forever. So imagine that was achieved. What changes would you begin to imagine beginning to occur hour by hour, day by day, month by month, year by year, as these results become more apparent? And here what's neat is 2/3 of the attendees would say, we'll get rid of people, we'll become complacent. And that's the mindset. 1/3 of the audience will say, we'll try things we've never tried before because now we know we can achieve it. So it's just kind of interesting. I just want to share that 2 out of 3 people look at this as a reason for complacency. And 1/3 said, if we could achieve 0 red beads, we're going to try harder. But neither one of them get into what I want to get into tomorrow. So what about continual improvement? So if the achievement of 0 red beads could be done through ever increasing speed, faster, lower and lower cost, cheaper, could the overall quality of the final product, 100% white beads, also be improved? That is there a way to improve quality, focus on better, of the white beads once we get 100% white beads? If yes, what does continual improvement of quality mean? If no, does continual improvement end once we get to 100%? And I've had audiences say, we can improve. How? Faster, cheaper. What about quality? I don't know. Can we improve constantly forever? Yes. How? Faster and cheaper. What about the quality? I don't know. So what I want to look at tomorrow, and you can ponder, is these 2 questions, these 2 answers. If the quality can be improved, what does that mean? And if not, then does improvement end? And so I thought that's a really cool space to stop and have you ponder for tomorrow. And let me just open it up. If there are any burning questions, comments, and again, please, if you have a sense of the answer, don't give it away. But let me just pause here and just see if there's anything burning that anyone wants to share with me and others.
I'll say something, Bill. Thanks for the great presentation. That took me down the memory lane. Although the bead experiment has sort of a manufacturing connotation and percent defective and so forth, but quite often Dr. Deming, especially since out of the crisis, he began the Bead experiment to explain the fallacy of ranking and merit systems. So it's it goes beyond just simply a
Oh, yeah.
production process. So that
Oh, yeah.
that's really just a very important point to consider.
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, right, Fazil? Nothing wrong with that, right?
Oh no, no. What I'm saying is
No, no, no.
that he expanded that on the
Yes.
experiment much larger.
Yes.
But it's always if you read out of the crisis, the title of that section about the bead experiment is about the fallacy of merit system.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you know,
that they all came from the same system. So
well, you're right. Show me what you're saying is show me a system that's focusing on
right,
zero
right,
defects, and I'll show you a system that looks at individuals and applies grades to them separate from the system.
right, right.
Yeah, all the same system, all the same
Yeah,
system. Yep, yep, yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks. It
and
was great. Yes.
no, great. So anyway, thanks everyone for being here today for our launch. Thanks Chuck for hosting, and we'll be back on tomorrow at 10 for part 2, and give those questions some thought. And again, great to see you all here.
Thank
Catherine, I
you.
see you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Doug and I will be flying tomorrow, so I'm sorry we're going to miss part 2, but you will record it.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Aloha.
Bye-bye.
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 Bill, you're not there.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Say goodbye. so,
Bye-bye.
so when you click us off, thanks so much.
Okay.
I'm on my phone. I never do that.
I will just end the thing.
Okay, wonderful.